Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. You know, during the cool weather months in Mexico, they say there is no beverage that will warm you up better than Atole. So Atole is this masa thickened beverage that comes in a great array of flavors, everything from fruit to nuts to chocolate, but all of them have in common the fact that they are incredibly warming, more warming than a cup of coffee or hot chocolate, in my opinion. And I think the reason is that it's a slightly thickened beverage and it just coats you and it just makes you feel warm from beginning to end. So Atole is something to keep in mind during these cool weather months. Now, I like a lot of the recipes for this beverage. We are going to start with half milk and half water. A lot of times when people make the fruit ones, they'll start with all water, or the chocolate one, they'll start with all milk. But this one is sort of in between because I'm going to be making a Mexican cinnamon atole. So into my pot here, I'm going to pour a couple of cups of water and a couple of cups of milk. And we are going to let that come to a simmer while we talk about the other ingredients that go in it. Now, because I want to create these traditional flavors in a traditional beverage here, I will say that piloncillo is my choice. So piloncillo is this unrefined sugar that comes in a cone. Most people say that it tastes a lot like brown sugar, but its flavor is actually stronger, and you have to kind of know how to work with it, because just as in the recipe that accompanies this video, I will say to you, you have to have chopped a piloncillo. Well, it's so hard that it's really hard to chop. Most people just give up before they finish the task of chopping it, but I'm going to give you a little tip here. This is unrefined sugar, so it's cane juice that has been boiled down, but the molasses has not been pulled out of it. When you're working with brown sugar, it's just granulated white sugar that is colored with molasses. That's all it is, but it's easier to work with than this stuff is. But if you want to chop this easily, my suggestion is put it in a microwave and go at 10-second bursts. It usually is about 30 to 40 seconds, something like that. And the moisture that is still in this hard cone will unstabilize the whole thing. It will be hot, so be careful. I put it on a plate or something like that so you can take the plate out, and then you can just dump it out on your countertop and it'll almost fall apart by itself. But remember, it is hot. That's what I did with this. Over there. Now, the second of the flavorings that we're going to talk about for this very traditional atole is Mexican cinnamon. And yes, some of this kind of cinnamon is grown in Mexico, but most of it's grown in Southeast Asia. It's just that Mexico uses more of it than any other country. Now, it doesn't look like the typical cinnamon sticks that you would buy in the United States. It's much flakier and lighter, and you can't do this to to American cinnamon sticks. You can't break them easily. This you could throw into an electric spice grinder and make fresh ground cinnamon, and it's just wonderful. It's wonderful because the aroma is so wonderful. It has something to offer that our American cinnamon, which is really cassia bark, just doesn't have. I always liken American cinnamon to the flavor you get in Red Hots. This is very floral, very perfumey. And to me, it's just iconic in Mexican baked goods and a drink like this kind of atole. Okay, so this, if it's ground, and you can buy it ground, this one is called cinnamon verum. And this, it translates as true cinnamon. So a lot of times you will find it labeled true cinnamon, or sometimes it will be called Vietnamese or Southeast Asian cinnamon. But it's always true cinnamon versus cassia bark. And I'm going to use some of this in our atole. So I'm going to put a teaspoon of it in there. That will usually be the right amount. Some people would tell you that they would prefer to put the whole cinnamon sticks in there and let those simmer for a little while. But I'm going to go from beginning to end with this thing. And so I don't have the time to devote to that part of it. Okay, so I want to dissolve all of that chopped up piloncillo in this, infuse our milk and water combination now with the cinnamon that is there. And while this is coming to a simmer, let's talk about the last of the flavorings that's going to go into this, and that is Mexican vanilla. So Mexican vanilla is the first vanilla that ever was developed. It comes out of Mexico in pre-Columbian times when the indigenous groups in Mexico discovered that the pod of a certain orchid could be fermented and produce this incredibly floral aromatic substance that could season so much of what they're doing. We got a little simmering going on over here, so I'm going to turn the temperature down a little bit because it's time for us now to be able to thicken this. We want to do that while it is simmering here. So let's talk about masa. You could go to your local tortilleria and buy fresh ground masa to use in this. But for most of us, having some masa harina or the dehydrated masa that has been pulverized, this comes from our friends at Hacienda. They provide all of the corn for our restaurants that we boil and grind and make into masa and turn into tortillas for all of you to enjoy in our restaurants. But this is the heirloom white corn masa harina, so it's made into masa and then dehydrated and ground. And I'm going to take a half a cup of this and sprinkle it into this simmering mixture and whisk it and whisk it and whisk it. Now, as this comes to a simmer again, we will notice that it thickens the beverage just a little bit, just the right amount. It's not thick as a sauce, it's a little thinner than that, and you'll see what that consistency is like when we get back to the simmer. So once this has come to a full simmer, and we need to do that to cook the masa into it, we will add the vanilla. You always want to add vanilla to recipes after the cooking is basically done, because you can sort of destroy all of that wonderful perfuminess of vanilla if you add it too early in the recipe. Okay, so what is the difference between Mexican vanilla and the vanillas that you find in lots of different places? Well, this is pure, number one. But if you compare, say, Tahitian vanilla with Mexican vanilla, just as with the true cinnamon versus the cassia bark, the Mexican vanilla will always be more perfumey, light, floral, really beautiful stuff. Okay, I'm going to turn it off now because we've come to a full rolling boil there. And I'm going to add about a teaspoon. I love vanilla, so I probably added a little bit more than a teaspoon of it there. And now we're ready to serve. I have this really beautiful mug that I bought from the Corona Talavera factory that is in the state of Tlaxcala. Puebla and Tlaxcala are the two places for Talavera in Mexico. This beautiful hand-painted pottery like this. So you can get a sense of the consistency of it. Beautiful stuff. Clean ourselves up a little bit there. And Atole de canela, cinnamon atole, the perfect cool weather beverage.